What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. It is Carter Scotland Allen here, and today we're going to take a look at what I watched in March of 2022. Yes, this video is a few days late, but let's not waste any more time and just get into what I watched of March 2022. Alright, so, got Letterboxd up. Let's get into it. So the very first thing that I watched this month was The Dark Knight. This movie is fantastic. Anybody who's seen it knows that it's amazing. Even if you're not a superhero or a Batman fan in particular, this movie is phenomenal. The acting, the cinematography, everything about this is perfect. I seriously don't ever see myself disliking this movie. Next up, we watched The Dark Knight Rises, the sequel, the final installment in the Christopher Nolan Batman trilogy. That movie was definitely a step down. It wasn't my favorite. It was fun. I do see myself watching it every couple years, but I definitely don't see myself revisiting it like I do Batman Begins or The Dark Knight. And keeping with the Batman theme, I watched Batman vs. Superman Dawn of Justice, the Deluxe or the Ultimate Edition, and yeah, no, it was a no for me. Just simply, if you guys go watch my reviews for all these Batman movies, you'll know how I feel. But Batman vs. Superman was not a Batman movie. It wasn't a good DC movie. It wasn't a good superhero movie. It didn't have good villains. It had some really iffy acting as well as some really iffy dialogue. Yeah, Batman vs. Superman is a no. It's a bad film. And then next up, I watched a horror thriller titled Fresh, which was a Hulu original with Sebastian Stan. And I gotta say, this movie was fucking nuts. Daviana had to look away basically half the entire film. It was a fun watch. It's something that is or has been done before, but it's done in a way that feels fresh, and that's the title of the damn movie. So it works. It's fun. It's a fun one-time watch for sure. I definitely don't think I will be revisiting it, just because it's a movie that I don't think many people will forget when they're done watching it. And that's a good thing and a bad thing, but it doesn't have much rewatch value because it is so memorable. Alright, and now we're taking a step backwards to Batman again. I saw the Batman, the Robert Pattinson 2022 Matt Reeves Batman, and that movie was fantastic as well. I have a Batman official movie ranking coming out soon, but I gotta say, this isn't like top 3, top 5. Don't know exactly where it sits, but I really enjoyed the Batman. And for the first horror of the year, I watched Hellbender. And I have to say, I really enjoyed this film. The fact that this was done by a family, it was done on a super low budget, very minimalistic setting, very minimalistic feeling. The visual effects were fantastic. Everything about this movie was what I want to see in an indie horror film, and that's just creativity, fun ideas, and just doing something that you want to do and not having to rely on, studios or things like that. Like, this was simply just a family making a cool, well-done horror film, and I appreciate that. Next up, I watched the new Hulu original titled No Exit, and I have to say, it started off pretty well. It was a fun watch overall. It didn't have as many graphic deaths that I expected it to. I expected this movie to be a little bit more violent, but it really wasn't too bad. There were only a couple kills that were kind of graphic in any way, and then a couple of the other kills throughout the film were left off screen, and I personally am not a huge fan of off-screen deaths. But the movie was fun. Again, I don't think I will rewatch this. I don't think I would recommend this to people. Actually, that's a lie. If you're at home and you're having a couple beers or something, this would be a fun movie to watch. Again, I don't think it's going to be anybody's favorite thriller, favorite horror, or favorite movie of the year, but it is a fun watch. And next up, I watched Long Shot. This was something that I told myself, I didn't tell myself, but I didn't really want to see this movie. I didn't have an interest for the longest time, but I heard some reviewers that I do follow that said it was fun, said it was a cute, fun film, and that's exactly what it was. It was really nothing more. Again, I don't need to see this film again. It's, Seth Rogen, Charlize Theron, political comedy, so could be very hit or miss with some people, but for the most part, it was pretty funny, and I had a good time. After that, I watched Freaky with Vince Vaughn, and this was an idea that is fantastic. It's Freaky Friday as a horror film. The killer switches body with the final girl, essentially. and it was a great concept. Some of the kills were a little bit too over the top for me, a little bit too goofy, and that's what this movie is. It's a horror comedy, so from that aspect, I can say that it really wasn't made for me. These aren't the types of horror films that I truly connect with, and I didn't feel any real connection. I did get kind of bored throughout this film, so I wouldn't watch it, again. I keep saying that for every movie here. But for anybody who is a horror fan, like if you like Tucker and Dale versus Evil, like this would be a movie for you because it's funny but bloody and yeah, just not my thing. Not bad in any way, just not my thing. Okay, and the next one is actually the first and only movie for the month of March that we did not finish. We only made it 40 minutes into this film, and that was The Beach Bum with Matthew McConaughey. This movie was so damn boring. It really didn't feel like there was any point to it. It just was this moment in this guy's life, and sometimes that can work. I love seeing movies where it's just this glimpse into this small nobody's life who may or may not do some crazy things, whatever it may be. I like seeing small contained stories, but this just wasn't that. It was basically just McConaughey being McConaughey, and that can be good, but it didn't work for me. Alright, and another Hulu original film for the month of March. We watched Deep Water with Ana de Armas and Ben Affleck. Again, this movie, would not watch again. It started off so strong. The acting is phenomenal all throughout. I think the only thing that really hold this movie back is the actual execution of the third act, some of the dialogue specifically in the third act, and some of the character decisions in the third act. Everything about the third act of Deep Water is fucking nuts. It's balls off the wall nuts and really just kind of dumb. And the ending is something that's not predictable, but feels like it happens, and then you're kind of just like, oh, okay. And it's like, what was the point for me watching that movie? I did not enjoy Deep Water. I enjoyed seeing Ana de Armas and Ben Affleck portray this toxic couple, which they did very well. But other than that, don't need to see this film again. If you want to see a very toxic relationship, go watch the first 30 minutes and then stop. Okay, and now we are getting into my favorite film of the year so far, X. I'm going to try and make this short because I fucking love this film. It is my favorite horror movie of the year so far, and just overall my favorite film of the year. This is written and directed by Ty West, has a fantastic cast: Mia Goth, Scott Mescudi, otherwise known as Kid Cudi, Jenna Ortega, Brittany Snow. Like, the cast is just phenomenal. Mia Goth, I think I said that already. I want to see this film again in theaters before it leaves, just because the kills were fantastic, the suspension building was fantastic, and it is just a horror film that was made for me. After that, watched House of Gucci, which was boring as shit. Daviana wanted to watch this. She's been begging to watch it for months. And then she fell asleep within like the first 30 minutes. That just shows you how uninteresting this story is. The story as a whole, I don't see why people would give a shit unless you are a huge fan of Gucci, and nobody's a real huge fan of Gucci unless you have a fuck ton of money. Like, this movie just seems so pointless. I don't care about the Gucci family. The story wasn't there. It probably would have been better as a mini-series, but even then, I don't want to sit down for 4 or 5 episodes of Gucci. I just don't. I don't care. Okay, everyone, I'm back. My camera died, so we left off at Last Night in Soho, and I did really like this movie. I was a little bit disappointed just because I do love basically all of Edgar Wright's previous work, and this was a fantastic, brilliant new idea, and it tackled trauma in a way that is new and fresh. So for that, it was really fantastic, and the visuals were fantastic, but it just, for some reason, didn't quite have that Edgar Wright feel, other than the dance sequence, which transitioned between basically 2 different time periods. That sequence definitely felt Edgar Wright-ish. There was a lot of Edgar Wright things, but it just didn't feel necessarily like a movie crafted by him. And with his previous work being what it is, I went into this movie with just slightly different hopes, or expectations, I should say. Next up, I watched The Mitchells vs. the Machines, and this movie was great fun. Not much to say other than this is, like a great animated movie. Probably the best animated movie I've seen since probably Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. I mean, I liked Encanto, I liked Luca, I liked those movies, but Mitchell's vs. the Machines was really fun, and the animation is great. Then I watched 2008's The Rocker, and this is starring Dwight Rainn Wilson from The Office. Dwight from The Office, Rainn Wilson. But it was fun. It's dated for sure. It's got a very stacked cast, surprisingly. It's got like Emma Stone, Josh Gad, Bradley Cooper, Will Arnett, Fred Armisen. So it was really stacked cast, especially for 2008, and it was, before Emma Stone and Josh Gad, kind of took off. But it was a fun movie. Don't need to see it again, but it was a fun movie to, I guess, fall asleep to and not have to worry too much about. Next up, I watched the 2022 Oscar nominated, or I guess 2021 Oscar nominated, Don't Look Up. This movie was fine. It was a cool idea. The ending was fun. I mean, that sounds bad, but like, the movie's fine. It's not anything crazy. It's nothing super memorable. Like, I won't ever watch this movie again. But it was fun. And it's weird because that's what I feel like I'm saying about most of these movies, is that they were fun, but wouldn't watch again. And that actually is the same thing I'm going to say for this next movie, Windfall. This had Jesse Plemons, Lily Collins, and Jason Segel. This was a really cool idea. The ending I didn't expect. The twists I, truly didn't expect. It just played out in a way that was a little bit too slow for me. I think maybe just an extra 20 minutes could have been cut off. I think if that had been shortened into honestly like just a full, just a 1 hour film, it would have been fantastic. And then we watched Bad Vegan, the 4-part documentary series on Netflix. Go watch it. It's fun. It doesn't really have the best payoff in the ending, but that's because it's a shitty story, honestly. Like, it not shitty in that I was told shitty. It's just a shitty situation for everybody involved, including the assholes involved. So go watch that if you haven't. Then I watched Dealing with Idiots, directed by Jeff Garlin, and I didn't know that there was a bunch of controversy about him until just after I watched that movie. So that was disappointing to hear, but I did enjoy the movie. Wouldn't watch it again. Did have a great cast, and there were some really funny parts. And then I watched Stick It, which is an awful movie, but I watched it as a kid with my sister, and so Daviana and I watched that. We just had a fun time. We weren't really paying attention. I fell asleep like towards the end, so I don't really remember how it ended, but I watched it as a kid, so it was fun. And now we only have 4 things left. I watched Death on the Nile without realizing that it was the sequel, or kind of sequel to Murder on the Orient Express. I don't know how I didn't know that. I mean, I did, I just didn't realize it while I was watching it, and I haven't even seen Murder on the Orient Express, so that was funny to realize. The movie was not good. It was really boring, and the whodunit part, the killers, were very obvious. There's one that I was like questionable on, but then I was like, nope, it's obvious. And that's just because I love murder mysteries, and I really do like solving the puzzle. Next up, I watched Airheads, which totally would not get made today. Let's see, so this is Adam Sandler, Steve Buscemi, and Brendan Fraser. This movie is a band that basically holds a whole radio station hostage in order to get their music played, and it is just dumb comedy through and through. It wouldn't get made today, and there's a reason. It's just not that good. The idea is funny, but it works in like a skit. It would be super funny as like an SNL skit, and that's honestly, I could see that where that might have stemmed from, honestly. Next up, for the very first time, I watched the Lego Batman movie. I had a really fun time with this. A bunch of people said that this is, their favorite Batman movie ever, like including all the live action. So that was a lot of talk for me to handle. And I will say I really enjoyed it, but it's not anywhere near the top 5 for me. It's probably, top 10 somewhere, but it just, it is a goofy, fun movie, and that's all it's meant to be. It's definitely not any Batman from the comics, but I am super glad that they were able to get as many villains as they did, and build that world of Gotham. So that was really fun to see, and it looked gorgeous. Okay, and this is a weird choice, but to end out the month, I watched a horror movie. If you can even call it a horror movie. The kills, they didn't really show it, and that was American Psycho 2, All American Girl, starring Mila Kunis. This movie was god awful, and I like Mila Kunis. The sequel to this this is the sequel to American Psycho, and I didn't like American Psycho the first time I watched it. The second time I watched it, I really enjoyed it. And then watching this, I knew it was bad, but I didn't expect it to be this bad. It didn't really show the kills, and so the sound design needed to be top-notch, and it just wasn't there. There was some, crunching and squishing and things like that, but typical things that you would hear. It felt really toned down, and it honestly felt like a TV movie. I don't know if it was a TV movie, but either way, that's what I watched in March of 2022. It is April, it's April 8th today. But as for this month, April, it's the 8th, and I have watched 11 movies, so I'm staying up to speed with the days, trying to just watch at least one movie a day. But that's it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I am Carter Scotland Allen. Stay tuned for next month's April, what I watched in April of 2022, as well as multiple reviews coming out in the next coming days. I'm Carter Scotland Allen, and I will see you guys in my next video. Peace.